right, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having us. Beautiful day, parade in New York. Yishar Koach for Arutz Sheva, Dudu, Uzi, the great team. Thank you for having me. I feel at home.
Excellent. That's what you should feel, at home. So congratulations on your book. I wanted to know, since it's been released, what is the question that you keep getting? What are people paying the most attention to that you wrote about?
So first, I'm happy to let you know that the book is sold out.
Wow.
Baruch Hashem, only next month, if you order it on Amazon today, you will get it. It's my second book, and I wasn't sure I will write my second book. But after finishing 5 long years at the UN, I decided that I want to share the stories behind the scenes with as many people as I can. And I'm optimistic. Israel today is in a great shape. We have strong bonds. We have new friends today in the Gulf. And when you read the book, you actually learn what's happening behind the scene at the UN in the world stage of diplomacy. And for me, it is a great experience. I don't want to tell you everything in the book, but there are some very good reporters in the crowd. There is some interesting stories that haven't been picked up yet by the media.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the biggest lessons you learned during your time as ambassador?
So first, I learned, and Rav Peretz spoke before me, he's a good friend of mine, to be a proud Jew, not to hide our Judaism. So when I spoke in the Security Council, I put my kippah on my head, and I read from the Bible. And my colleagues in Jerusalem, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, told me, Danny, what are you doing? It's the Security Council. And I told them exactly. First, we speak about our biblical rights to the land. Then we can speak about international law and other issues. When you respect the tradition and the Jewish religion, you get respected. So we entered into the UN. We brought Israeli holidays. We did Tashlich service, Passover, Hanukkah, you name it. And for me, it gave me a lot of strength and also a lot of respect at the UN.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has criticized Israel for police attacking mourners during a funeral of slain Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. What are your thoughts on the UN taking such a strong stance like this?
First, we regret the tragedy. Every loss of life of innocent civilian and reporter, we regret it. But let me ask them, where have you been when 19 Jews were massacred on the streets of Israel? Why we haven't heard the UN? Why we haven't heard Secretary Blinken? Why we haven't heard anyone from the EU condemning the attacks against us? So that's hypocrisy in action. We are willing to investigate this incident, but unfortunately the Palestinians, they care more about blaming Israel rather than looking into the truth.
Were you surprised to see the UN Security Council also issuing a statement reiterating that journalists should be protected as civilians and also call for the UN to investigate that? What did you think about that?
I wasn't surprised, but I want to share with you that at the UN, you have public UN and private UN. Publicly, they put those ridiculous statements and allegations. But privately, they admire Israel. They want to get closer to us. And I think our main challenge is to close that gap between the public UN and the private UN.
What can we do about rising anti-Semitism? What do you think are some steps that we can take?
First, we should not be afraid from those anti-Semites. We are the eternal people. We will prevail. When you look at the history of the Jewish people, you always had someone there against us. Whether it was Aman, the Amalek. So today it's different names. But when we have the inner strength, we can move forward. And that's what I did at the UN. I brought to the UN thousands of Jewish students to fight anti-Semitism and BDS. And inside the General Assembly, we had a beautiful event. And I think for that matter, we should demand more. Sometimes we are afraid to ask our colleagues for answers. And I will give you an example. When Secretary Blinken came to Israel before the month of Ramadan, he spoke next to our Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett. And Secretary Blinken, what he said, I hope that you will control settler violence. Right before Ramadan. I expected our Prime Minister to stop and tell him, Mr. Secretary, that's what I did at the UN. Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, the problem ahead of us is not settler violence. The problem ahead of us is the incitement about Temple Mount, the incitement that we hear from the Palestinian Authority, from Hamas. He didn't do it, and look what happened afterward. We saw a wave of terrorism. We saw that the Temple Mount for a month became a playground for radicals. We should be stronger, and we can be stronger even with our allies at the UN.
Since your tenure, how has the BDS movement evolved? Do you think it's gotten stronger? It's weaker? What are you noticing?
I'm optimistic. When I started to fight against BDS, and I tell a beautiful story in my book about an event we initiated in the Queen's Museum, the reenactment of the vote that took place for the establishment of the State of Israel. There was a pushback that told us we cannot do the event at the museum. And we pushed back, and we won that case. But look where we are today. Today, all major Jewish organizations fight BDS. Students have tools to fight BDS. And one of the things I want to share with the young generation here today, it's never going to end. We are not going to wake up one morning and say, that's it, we won. We defeated BDS, anti-Semitism. It will be there. It's about us being strong enough to continue to fight against that.
All right, Danny Danon, former ambassador to the UN for Israel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me today.